Hello and welcome. Today I put Fedora 34 on my system, and I put it on my Mac Pro, my 2008 Mac Pro, which is a 3.1 Mac Pro. And if there are other people who are interested in doing this, I'd like to save you some trouble. So one of the things that you might have heard is that although it's very difficult to get Ubuntu to run on a Mac Pro, it's very easy to get Fedora to run. And that's not true. I had the same difficulty with the installation media the same kind of problems that I had with Ubuntu I had with Fedora. So let's see, I'm going to switch over to the screen cam here, and I want to describe how I did this. So first of all, I use a program called Etcher. And Etcher, this is make a bootable USB stick for macOS with Etcher, Balana Etcher, how to create a bootable USB flash drive. Well, it's pretty easy. So I have a system that's running Pop! OS, and I downloaded the Balana Etcher program. I took a look over on GitHub. It has, if I look at Balana Etcher over there on GitHub, it has a lot of users. And that made me feel comfortable enough to get this executable program, download it from their site and use it. Yeah, so I think it had, what does it say here? Yeah, it has 20,000 stars. So that means that there are 20,000 accounts out here on GitHub that have used this, and they like it enough to star it. That made me feel comfortable that this was not going to put some sort of a virus on my system. And once I got this up and running, it was pretty easy. You just point to the ISO that you've downloaded, and then you point to the device that you want to put it on, the thumb drive you want to put it on, and it flashes the thumb drive. It's kind of slow. It took, I don't know, about 10 minutes or something to get the thumb drive ready. But once it was ready, I removed it from my Ryzen system, which was running Pop! OS, and I tried to install it directly onto my Mac Pro. I put an old SSD in there that I wasn't using, and tried to, you hold the Option key down, and it brings up the boot menu for the Mac Pro, and you can choose it showed me that it had a Fedora bootable drive, and I chose that, and it just never came up. And then you'll find information out there that says that when you get that when you get to the boot screen where it shows you that you have Fedora on there, you hit the letter E, and it goes into the UEFI editing mode, and you can, I think it's no mode set that you can type in there, and I don't know, I've got a note somewhere for that. But anyway, it didn't work. Then you hit the F10 key, and it's supposed to boot up and install, and it didn't do that. And I had the same exact problem when I tried to install Ubuntu on my Mac Pro. And so what I ended up doing in both cases was going to a Linux box that was already running, and I put the SSD in there, and I installed it that way. Now, I did want to talk to you briefly about the system that I used for doing this. I have an old, here, let me bring this back so I can show you. Just switch over to looking at me again here. All right, so I have this old motherboard with an i7, 4th gen i7 on it, and I haven't been using it. It's just been sitting in a box, and I tried to use this as a test bench system, and it really didn't work. Unfortunately, I'd given the case away, so I didn't have a case to put it in. But what I've done here, I don't know if you can see this at all, probably too far away. You can kind of see like there's a little bump here. I put standoffs. I bought a box of standoffs and put the standoffs on here. And now this functions as a test bench. I was able to hook a power supply to it and pop a graphics card in the PCIe slot here. And I was able to boot this up. And from that thumb drive that I created, and so there are a couple of things about this. When you do that, don't ask it to install directly. The advice I got online somewhere was that one should go into live mode with it, as though you just wanted to take a look at it, and then afterwards you can go into the activities view and choose install to disk. Now, I did that, and I ended up having problems. And it may have something to do with my display. I have a large 4K monitor, and so I had to go into displays and set it to 200%, so that I could actually read what was on the screen there. Otherwise, it was so small I couldn't read it. And several times my system locked up, and the cursor got weird. It looked like the whole screen was inside the cursor. So it basically was a mess. Also, I was unable to get Wi-Fi working at all. So what I ended up doing was I took this test bench into another room where I have my router, and I hooked it up directly with an Ethernet cable and to a small monitor that I have, and I did the installation. I booted to the live whatever, and then I did a sudo DNF upgrade -- refresh, and it upgraded a lot of files. So this is happening on the thumb drive at this point. I have not installed it yet onto the SSD. So basically, I'm getting the newest version of Fedora 34 on my thumb drive. And then once I had the newest version on there, then I requested it to do an installation to disk. And I had it wipe the SSD clean and do the installation on there. Now, once that had happened, then you have to reboot it, right? So you do the installation, set the time zone and that sort of stuff, and it comes back and it asks you to create a user account, which I did, and put in a password. And at that point, the first thing I did before I did anything with anything graphical was I opened up Terminal, and I did the same thing there, the DNF upgrade dash dash refresh, so that whatever was causing the system to lock up on me seemed to be fixed with that DNF upgrade, or by that DNF upgrade statement. So I would recommend to you, before you mess with anything else, do that first. And so a little comment on DNF here, because if, like me, you've been running Ubuntu systems and you want to try Fedora, Fedora is not just Ubuntu with apt change to DNF. It's fairly different. And the DNF command itself seems to be much more complicated. I get the impression that it does a lot more than apt. It may be a more sophisticated tool. And so a couple of things. Find a good, well, you can go to the Fedora site and you can read the documentation for DNF. I think that's worth doing. I did that. Still didn't really understand it. And then I, of course, went to some of these sites that, the first 20 things you should do after you install Fedora 34. Went through those, and there were a number of DNF commands, and I ran those. And so, the DNF commands are, there are update groups, and there's the core, and there are all these different kinds of repositories. So it's quite complex. Be prepared to have to spend some time on that. And there are other things that are strange about it. I don't like Bash. I think it's old-fashioned. So the first thing I do on a system is I put ZSH on. And you cannot just change the shell on Fedora. You actually have to put in a special package so you can do that, which is, what is it? Something Linux users, lib Linux users, or something like that. I had a note for it, but I don't see it here now. util-linux-user. You have to do a DNF install of that before you can do a CHSH, right? A change shell. Very odd. And then I had to reboot before it would take properly, and change my. I couldn't just exit the terminal and start a new one up. It wasn't changing my shell variables. So if I did an echo $shell, it was still coming up as bash. I'm finding that with Fedora, after I do things, in order for them to take, very often I have to reboot the system, much more so than GNOME, not GNOME, but Ubuntu. So that's kind of annoying, but I probably have to figure some things out about why that's the case. It's probably because I'm such a noob when it comes to Fedora. But be prepared for some of that. If things are just not working right, reboot. It may just fix it for you. All right, so what else? One of the things that came up as I was doing these DNF commands that I found on I think on FOSS, the free and open source software, they have a site and they've got some instructions for setting up Fedora 34. One of the things that came up was that it asked if I wanted to upgrade the firmware. And I was a bit hesitant to do that, but I had read somewhere else or heard somewhere else from another user that they had successfully installed new firmware and everything worked fine. So I went ahead and I did it, and I'm happy to say that this Mac Pro continued to work fine with the new firmware. In fact, who knows, maybe it's working better now. For one thing, I'm finding that my video quality here on OBS is far superior than what it was when I ran this on Ubuntu on my Mac Pro. So it may just be that there are some better drivers and firmware available through Fedora. I don't know yet. What else? Some other strange things is that you can't just install Google. Now I know some people are cringing now because I'm talking about installing Google Chrome, but I like Google Chrome, and it's something that I like on my systems, and so it's something that I do here, and I just want to show you, these are the commands that I had to run in order to get Google Chrome installed. Right? I needed this DNF plugins core, I needed Fedora workstation repositories, I needed to have the config manager enable Google Chrome, -- set enabled Google Chrome, and only then could I install Google Chrome stable. Prior to that, I had gotten the RPM file right from Google's website, and it asked me, do you want to install this? And I said yes, and it started the installation process. And it came back and said, sorry, we're not allowed to install Google Chrome on this system. So it's just an oddity of this particular distribution. I'm also noticing that I'm using a lot of CPU. This is just for running OBS, but this system is 13 years old. I'm really kind of impressed that it's running this well at all, and I think it looks rather beautiful. Another thing that I had to do was I had to fix the key bindings on this. So I think that it's super page up or something like that will allow you to move to the left, the workstation to the left. I set that to control. I went into the key bindings and custom key bindings, and I set that to control super left arrow to move to the left, and right arrow to move, control super right arrow to move to the right in my workspaces. So I would highly recommend you do something like that. Otherwise, I had to go into the activities view. I had to, the super key gets you into the activities view, and then I had to click on the workspace I wanted to go into. So it's not very intuitive, especially the key bindings are not very intuitive. So I like the key bindings for Pop OS, so I'm going to change these to be the same. So to bring up Google Chrome, I hope to do a super key B for browser, and for email, the super E, for files, super F. These are just things that I'm used to having, and so I'll need to go into custom setup, custom keyboard setup. Let me see. Let me bring that up for you just so you can take a look at it. Oops. So hit the super key, go into activities view, and type in keyboard. A shortcut. Now tweaks. By the way, you have to install GNOME tweaks. So that's a DNF install GNOME tweaks. It doesn't come like that. So you go down into custom shortcuts here, and it's very nice the way they have that. They have these broken up into categories. Fedora seems to really like categories, which I'm a fan of also. And so if you go up into navigation here, you can see I modified 6 of these here. Move to workspace on the left. I set to control super left. Here's control super right. And then the other ones that I want is to move one window, where is it? move window one workspace to the left is Shift Super Left. So if I want to move this here to the right, I click on it, I hold down the Shift key, the Super key, and hit the right arrow, and it moves it, and left arrow will move it this way. So, this is very common that you want to, if you've got a busy workspace like this, very often you want to take an application out and move it someplace where it's on its own. That's the whole idea of having workspaces. So you really need the hotkeys for that. You need the navigation keys and this ability to move. The other thing that I like to have is I like the Super M to maximize a window. I like Super H to hide a window. And I like Super Q to quit a window. And these just make sense. The majority of these shortcut keys I am never going to use. I'm never going to learn them. But these are very basic for GNOME. If you're running GNOME, there's no reason to run GNOME if you don't use workspaces. And if you're going to use workspaces, you have to know the keyboard shortcuts for them. Anyway, that's about it. I hope you've learned something here, and I thank you for joining me. I'm just going to say goodbye.